Good afternoon, everyone. Today's October 2nd, and I'm going to call this city council meeting to order. There you go. Up first, we'll do our invocation, and we do not have a pastor, so we'll just take a moment of silence and then to the pledge. All right, thank you. Councilwoman Hebert with the pledge.
Please join me with your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so I got a couple requests from staff. One being to move 4A up to the very beginning of the agenda so our amazing crew can leave early and we can respect their time, as well as 3A, the resolution for the schedule of fees to be pushed to the October 16th meeting per Parks and Rec request. And then I believe Councilman King's is actually Councilwoman Hebert's 1E instead of 1F. So other than that, if anyone else has any other changes to the schedule?
I'd like to pull 3D for discussion.
All right, 3D. All right, do I hear anything else? And then can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Seeing no further discussion, calling the vote. All right, ayes have it, so moved. All right, great. So up first, we will do our underground.
So we have Mr. Mark Porter here of Utility Consultants of Florida, and he's going to walk you through the RFP that's in your packet, and hopefully council will give us the direction to move that thing forward and get it out to the public.
All right, thank you, sir. Again, Mark Porter with Utility Consultants of Florida. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting me up front on the agenda. I know that this is a really large project, and I know that the city has a lot of interest in making sure that this is a good project, and on our end, we do just as much. So I'm not going to obviously go verbatim for the RFP. I know you're seeing it for the first time, and you've had a chance to review it, but I just wanted to kind of identify that one thing that we understood early on was, minimal impacts. We know that you guys, when you were experiencing US 98, FDOT corridor, there was a lot of closures, things like that. Cost efficiencies, that's what we're going to be looking for from these contractors. Experience with similar coastal communities, that's really important for this type of project. And then the schedule efficiencies. We want to make sure that we get this done in a timely fashion and get these poles out of here. So with that being said, the dates are in the package. Most of the, the bid going out and then the mandatory the pre-bid meeting will take place in October with the bids coming in November. And then, of course, if council chooses to go ahead and do presentations, that will also happen within that timeline on those current dates. The experience and expectations for this project, of course, will be the contractor who's familiar and done FPL work. That'll also include CenturyLinks, Cox Communication, Unity Fiber, and then the FPL streetlight conduit infrastructure portion. So that's all encompassed into this RFP. Obviously, the minimal eligibility requirements that they meet all the standards, but requirements, licensing, thing like that. Our most important thing on this project is that the FPL underground conversion project, they've got experience. They've worked with FPL. We also run those through FPL's representative, Haltran, just to let them know these are the bids that we received and that those contractors are still within good standing with FPL. So that's part of that too. We're going to be looking for these companies to provide their expertise with this specific work, like I said, in the undergrounding communities, especially in coastal areas. Also, as well, we're looking for them to experience and highlight their work with the carriers so that work's performed in a sequence that kind of ties in with that work and that the poles are ready to come down. We're not waiting for the carriers. I know that was an important thing to the city. And then another thing that we add that's important for us, and we've had some experience on some local projects and some down south, is just identifying and protecting the existing utilities. Sometimes these utilities, especially in that first quarter, they're very important and critical to the businesses being operational, not going down. Cable, a lot of people rely on their internet connection. So we've had a lot of experience, but we're going to want them to kind of tell us that in their approach to the project is how they're going in and identifying it and not just relying on locates only. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit more when they come in. But there's a lot of times where the locates aren't exactly where they're supposed to be. Contractors have the ability to go out there and kind of do their own due diligence above and beyond that to protect it. So we have very few outages or hit lines on a lot of projects as a result if they show they've got the experience in that. So we'll be looking. Interactions with the city, regulatory staff, public relations, things like that, just that they've done that, they're familiar with the process, timely completion of the project, and then a past project survey. We do a lot of the projects where they just go to their current clients or FPL recently completed projects and just have those clients basically fill out a questionnaire and grade them on their performance. So we'll be checking that. And then last but not least is the bid and the cost proposal, which we're all anxious to see on that. So we're looking forward to it. So I just wanted to kind of highlight those things. I know there's a lot in there, but those are the things that we know are important to the city. So we just wanted to kind of expand on that, and we're excited to be at this stage of the project. So just wanted to see if you guys have any questions or if there's anything we can address.
All right, Councilman Destin.
Just give me an idea, what is the pool of qualified folks that you've dealt with in the past? 2 or 3, 4 or 5?
We're expecting for this project, I think maybe upwards of 5. I'm hopeful to get maybe 7 or 8. I know that we've had quite a few reach out during before the bids are going out. So we've been approached by 4, and I think actually 5. So we're getting a lot of interest. They're doing a lot of projects, neighboring projects in down south, and they've expressed interest in coming up here. So I'm hoping that we get at least 5. I'm hoping maybe 7 to 8 would be ideal. Yeah, all of them that I've reached out to, I'm very familiar with. I think all 5 of them are definitely familiar and able to do this work. One of them is doing an adjacent project, and another one's doing a real large project down south. So they're good fits. At the end of the day, what you have going for you is that they're also not only, have to show that experience, but they have to still be in good standing with FPL. It's, they're not going to be able to just get anybody in here. There's a lot of boring contractors. There's not that many that do this specialty work, so we're expecting maybe 5 to 8.
All right, seeing no further, Councilman Schmidt? Yep.
Yes, I asked staff today, I just wanted to confirm that they mentioned that you're going to be on the bid committee as the special.
SME, subject matter expert.
Yes, that's correct? You'll
Yes,
be?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
awesome, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, this is not, the RFP document looks okay, but I would like the staff or your firm, to develop a map. Basically, where you have the map sections and you show where all the people, I understand that, but I want the citizens to look at where the undergrounding is actually going to be.
Okay.
And so I want to overlay it on a map where it says, here's where this line's cut, and here's this street that we're going up, and here's this street, and here's how far we're going up, okay?
Perfect, not a problem.
All right, thank you.
All right, and will we only have that for phase 1 right now? Because that's what we're
Correct.
working on?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the only design we have so far.
All
Yep.
right, Councilman Gao?
I was just looking at Live Oak Fiber is coming into town. I know that people mentioned that they're not going underground right now. But if there's a chance to partner where they can absorb some cost, because there is going to be cost to implement the service, it wouldn't hurt if somebody reached out and just said, hey, would you guys be willing to donate if we allowed you to be part of this undergrounding service? Maybe that would help supplement some of the costs from our end.
Absolutely. Well, we've had some discussions. I know city staff has, so we'll reach out and make sure that they're aware of the project and the timing of that. So yeah, anytime we can get more than one, collectively do that build, it's going to keep someone from coming in after us to come in and build that infrastructure.
Thank you, sir.
All right, anyone else? Seeing none? One would like to,
Yeah.
Call the motion.
I will move to direct the city manager to release the RFP 23-10-ENG as presented for publication.
Second.
all right, got a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussions, calling the vote. Unanimous, ayes have it.
Safe drive.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for being here. All right, so up next, 1A, Choctawhatchee Basin Alliance. Thank you guys for being here. So if you can just push the button, it'll turn red. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. My name's Kayla Wingard. I am the monitoring coordinator with the Choctawhatchee Basin Alliance. and I am presenting a summary and updates on our progress and activities as part of the partnership with the City of Destin on the NPDES program. So next slide, please. So who and what, before I get into the summary for this reporting period, which is April 1st to September 30th, just a refresher of who CBA is and what we do. Choctawhatchee Basin Alliance is a nonprofit organization. We work to maintain swimmable, fishable, livable waterways throughout the whole Choctawhatchee watershed. And we work towards those goals through education with students, with community members, through monitoring and research efforts in water quality and seagrass and other monitoring efforts, as well as restoration events out in the bay with living shorelines and other projects as well. All right, next. Okay, and where I did mention the Choctawhatchee watershed, and when I say that, I truly mean almost the entire watershed. So we are all throughout the bay. That map there has all of our stations, almost all of our stations. We've added a couple in the bay, in all of the coastal dune lakes, and up the river into southern Alabama. So that is our stretch as far as our monitoring efforts. We also work in various communities with our education efforts throughout the watershed as well. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so in reference towards what CBA does with the City of Destin as part of this partnership with the NPDES program, it just makes sense based on our mission and what the program aims to accomplish. So the goal being to regulate stormwater runoff and also reduce it. So CBA is partnered to provide several different services to the City of Destin towards that goal of reduction, and those services span 3 general areas, being education and outreach, public involvement and participation, and also pollution prevention. All right, so that first category, our public education and outreach, we provide education programs to school-age students as well as those older than school age. We're all learning. And this slide here is detailing what we did in this reporting period with our school-age students. So we worked with 9 classes of 5th grade students at Destin Middle as part of the Grasses in Classes curriculum that we're working with them throughout the school year. So in May, for this period, we offered end-of-year field trips at a living shoreline for those classes, 191 students, 5th graders. And it wasn't just a one-off field trip to get them excited and have fun and run around. This is a culminating experience to wrap up their curriculum in the school year, where they're learning about stormwater runoff and all sorts of environmental issues, and it's all focused around the growth of salt marsh grasses. Specifically, Spartina alterniflora, they plant and have a nursery at their school, and then at the field trip, they're sense-making around all the environmental concepts they learned about throughout the year and actually get to prepare those plants for planting at a living shoreline. So that happened in May with our students, our school-age students. Next slide. Thank you. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. We also have somewhat recently partnered with the Destin Fort Walton Beach Little Adventures program. So throughout the summer, we did partner with them to bring lessons to small groups of students on site at a beach to explore that environment as well. Okay, and in regards to our older than school age students, we had several presentations this last period, one of them being to the current Destin Forward class. So my colleague Jenna Kilpatrick, who was likely the person giving you presentations in the past, she is now the science engagement and communication specialist, and so she spoke to that class about CBA's mission, of course, most recent projects for our water quality monitoring and improvement and green infrastructure is what she talked about there. I also gave a presentation to the Panhandle Fly Fishers Club recently, and again, to new and old members, a refresher on who CBA is, what we do, as well as some water quality issues that they were specifically interested in, and how to read our annual water quality report, which we did release this past in September. So we focused on how they can use that report for their own questions and also our online water quality dashboard that they are interested in for fishing purposes. And also, last but not least, volunteer opportunities. I love this club because they are really excited about becoming a part of our efforts more regularly and volunteering their time on a regular basis towards our restoration projects. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for the public involvement and participation, how we're getting the Destin community involved in CBA efforts, we recently had an international coastal cleanup at Noriego Point. In these pictures, you can see several of our staff members. They helped recruit volunteers, and they also had an information booth there, and also collected lots of trash, as you can see in those photos. Not only do we work with our network to have on-site organized cleanups, but we also work through the Clean Swell app and encourage community members to organize their own cleanups, not wait for another organization to schedule it, but to do it on their own time. Because it's a really easy, accessible way to get involved in cleaning up your local environment. Okay. All right, also through the iNaturalist app, we have a project on there called the CBA Watershed. We're encouraging everyone, you might be familiar with this app already, but you can observe different species that you're seeing. Even if you don't know what you're observing, you can post a picture and then somebody with the experience can identify that. We have over 80,000 observations in the CBA Watershed program. It's continuing to grow, and with weather and climate changes and development and storms, having really detailed and community-driven data about what's going on and how nature is reacting is going to be ever more important. So that is continuing and picking up speed. All right, next. Okay, volunteer water quality monitoring. This is what I personally am most involved with at CBA. We are doing monthly sampling at 135 stations throughout the watershed. With the City of Destin partnership, we have 6. 4 of those around Joe's Bayou, Indian Bayou, and 2 within the Destin Harbor. Those in Joe's Bayou and Indian Bayou are typically sampled by CBA staff for this recent quarter, but we are looking for a volunteer to take that over. But the 2 stations in the Destin Harbor, earlier this year, we actually changed the way we were doing it. So instead of having CBA staff or a volunteer navigate through the harbor and do the sampling, we have partnered with Luther's Pontoon, who is offering their vessel and captain so that we can, not just so that we can focus on the water quality monitoring procedures, but we can also use that as an opportunity to bring on community members, bring on community leaders. I know several people in this room have been on the pontoon with Allison and John and gotten to see firsthand what our water quality monitoring efforts look like. So we really appreciate that opportunity. We can also bring volunteers on to host an actual training at that location. So that's been really exciting, and we're really grateful to have that opportunity. Okay, next. So this is where I was describing our 6 City of Destin water quality stations are. We have Joe's Bayou, Indian Bayou, and the top right is getting closer towards the bridge, and then the bottom 2 are those 2 stations within the Destin Harbor, and these are sites that we monitor monthly. Next. And what are we monitoring for? So in the field, there are some readings that we will have a value for right away. So these are temperature, dissolved oxygen, specific conductivity, salinity, pH, turbidity, and measuring water clarity. So these are either with a water quality meter, or in the case of clarity, we use a really accessible tool called a Secchi disc to measure that. And we take these readings at the surface and at the bottom of the water column. And additionally, we do take samples of the surface water to analyze in a lab, and those are total phosphorus, total nitrogen, and chlorophyll, so your nutrients. All right, and so when we're talking about nutrients, there are specific numeric nutrient criteria for different areas of the bay. So we have specific criteria for the Middle Bay and different criteria for the West Bay. And the reason that is because if you look at what would be a natural concentration for the West Bay near the East Pass versus where the Choctawhatchee River, where the mouth is in the east portion of the bay, these are very different environments. So it makes sense that our nutrient criteria are a little different depending on where you're looking at. So that Middle Bay is those first 4 stations, and the West Bay is what the Destin Harbor, their criteria is in. All right, next. Okay, so these results, every year we report on the levels for the previous year. So not only the average, what did we observe for that year overall, but also how does that year change what the 10-year trends are for various parameters. So what we're looking at right here is the top left square is our total phosphorus. So did levels at those stations exceed or not exceed the nutrient criteria limits? Green means good. They did not exceed. So in all of those 4 stations, we're good for total phosphorus. Same thing for total nitrogen, that's the top right. Chlorophyll is the bottom left. You can see there are 2 red dots, and that means that the chlorophyll did in fact exceed the numeric nutrient criteria in 2022. That's the same as last year. It hasn't changed from last year. However, the chlorophyll levels do continue to, are continuing to be on a decreasing trend over the last 10 years. All right, next. Okay, and then West Bay, this is where we have our Destin Harbor sites. Same as last year, for each of total phosphorus, total nitrogen, and that chlorophyll, we did not exceed the numeric nutrient criteria in 2022. Okay, now we're getting into our pollution prevention / good housekeeping category of the report. So we have monofilament recycling bins all throughout the harbor. We have 4 in the harbor and 1 at Joe Bayou Boat Ramp. And fishermen recycle their monofilament line here, keeping it out of the waterways, out of the harm of getting mixed up with wildlife. And not only is it out of harm's way, but it can then be recycled into new fishing products. So we collect a lot of monofilament at those stations, and we have a volunteer who's helping us at the Destin Harbor, but we do have an open position for a volunteer at Joe's Bayou. Okay. Oyster shell recycling. So this is a program we've been doing for a long time and we're continuing to do. We have 4 Destin restaurants who participate in recycling their oysters, their oyster shells that we can then use in our restoration projects in oyster reefs throughout the bay. So the participating restaurants are Back Porch, Boathouse, Bertula's, and Johnny O. Quigley's. In just that period of April to September, over 130 tons of oyster shell were collected. Now, from those Destin restaurants was over half of that amount. So we probably have 10 to 12-ish restaurants in total all throughout the area, Fort Walton Beach to Santa Rosa Beach, and those 4 restaurants contributed at least half to that 130 tons. So that's a lot of shell, and we really appreciate all of that help. Additionally, we have 1 shell staging site located in Fort Walton Beach, and that helps us get that oyster shell into restoration projects over in Okaloosa County. All right, this is just to reiterate some of our volunteer opportunities. We've made a lot of progress this reporting period, but we are actively looking for a little bit of help from the Destin community where we have had some turnover. So our Destin water quality volunteer for that Joe's Bayou and Indian Bayou, an open position for a monofilament collection recycler at Joe's Bayou. And finally, we have a preparation day for volunteers to help get the next year of Grasses and Classes students all of their supplies ready. All right. And that's it for me. Thank you for having me. I'm available for questions if there are any.
Oh, there's a few.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, Councilman Guile.
Thank you, sir. I had the privilege of being out there with Miss Alice McDowell in July.
Awesome.
And I got to tell you, she was an amazing mentor, and I was very impressed by her passion. We're very lucky to have her there. Someone else I wanted to really put a special thanks to is John Stevens, because he volunteers his resources, his time, his fuel, his pontoons to do these services and help. But I really appreciate both of you.
Good deal. Councilman Schmidt.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. The volunteer for Joe's Bayou monofilament, is that something that's pretty simple to do, or
Yeah, so
collection-wise?
what it includes is there's one monofilament bin, so volunteers unscrew the bottom, empty out the contents of the bin. We do have a data sheet where they estimate how much line, how much trash, because oftentimes that finds its way in there. And then there's cleaning of the line, so cutting off hooks, cutting off weights, and preparing it to be shipped. So it's not simply emptying it and then forgetting it, but it's, it's pretty easy to trade on.
Sure. No, okay. I was just curious. I know, maybe somebody, one of our Parks Committee, or, I know we have an employee that's out there too, but I don't know if that's something we can ever assist with employee-wise, but I'm just thinking out loud. And then wastewater. We've been having some people talk about waste issues in the harbor over the years since I've been up here. Do you know which particular, I think in the past y'all said that you didn't test for some of that stuff, or maybe I'm misunderstanding, but phosphorus, nitrogen, chlorophyll, would any of those be impacted by
By wastewater?
By illegal dumping.
By illegal dump?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a particular one, all of them? I mean.
Wow, so from wastewater, those nutrients, the phosphorus and nitrogen for sure,
Okay.
are going to come from that. And then in turn, the chlorophyll would,
Okay.
that's a measurement of the algae.
Right. So just because it passed doesn't necessarily mean.
It's not happening.
Right. It's just not the certain level, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
It's not that volumetric,
Right.
that concentration. Yeah.
Still not good for it, though, obviously.
No.
Right. Okay.
I
No,
agree with
thank you. Didn't think so. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else we could test for to be more specific on, contamination rate in our harbor?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Maybe more for afterwards. I mean, I would just be willing to pay more for them to do that, so we could at least have them. I mean, if they're doing it monthly, we could see what's going on. But anyways,
I mean, that's one
I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm
we
just.
can talk, yeah, for sure.
Me and Kevin like to talk broadly. Councilwoman Hebert.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for coming. Great presentation. When you got to the part about where the oyster shells, is there a reason why it's just those 4 restaurants? I mean, are the other restaurants, have you not asked them, or do they not realize that they could contribute? What's the status of like the other restaurants that have oyster shells?
So throughout the years, we've had kind of a rotating roster of restaurants that participate. For one reason or another, they'll drop off. Maybe they can't get their staff to continuously, participate in it. Some restaurants don't do oysters. And then there's also the matter of how much capacity we have at the time. I think in the future, we would look to be able to recruit even more restaurants. But Allison, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think at this moment,
I mean, I didn't want to name any specific restaurants, but one that's hosting the fishing rodeo. I mean, I eat oysters there a lot, so I just was surprised their name wasn't.
A lot of it is capacity. We can only do so much. Right now, we have to dump twice during the pickup, just because we are picking up so much oyster shell, and so we only need so much as well for projects that we use. Yeah, so we're always considering expansion, but the time has to be right for that. Also, one thing that John reminded me that we didn't mention is our oyster gardening program. We're always looking for people to come on board our oyster gardening and do oyster gardening from our dock. Okay, Kevin Schmidt, sign him up. Yeah.
Councilman King.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank y'all for being here. I love this organization. My friends and family and I spend a ton of time on the Choctawhatchee Bay, and you know, ever since y'all, as long as I can remember that y'all have been involved, I mean, it just seems like it gets better and better every year. So thank you. I've gotten to see some of the live shorelines and the, you know, bags of oysters and stuff. It's just as teeming with life. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key. I had a question about one. Years and years ago, I worked at a restaurant that was involved in the oyster farming deal, and it is a bear to keep up with. See, I mean, to see these guys are shucking out thousands of oysters a day, and then you've got to put them somewhere. So it's no easy job storing, you know, oyster shells when you're used to throwing them out. So I hate it, but it's just a tough deal. I had a question about that. I remember, I think last year or the year before, y'all were here talking about, I had a question about the chlorophyll. It sounds like Joe's Bayou testing area is better this year than it was in the past. Is that right?
I can check, but I'm pretty sure it was the Indian Bayou area that exceeded that limit. Is that what you were referring to? The one that exceeded?
I remember the last time y'all came and brought us an update, there was a chlorophyll issue. And now, you know, if you look at, I mean, y'all know better than anybody what feeds Indian Bayou and what feeds Joe's Bayou is, you know, a lot of it is runoff from the city of Destin. So I'm curious as to how and that may be a question for another day, but if that's cleared up, you know, I don't know. I just was curious about that. And then my last question, the water testing volunteer that you need for Joe's Bayou and Indian Bayou, what does that entail if people were wanting to be involved? We all know people that live on those bayous that could help. So what is that, just like the monofilament deal, what does that volunteership entail?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more in depth than the monofilament. For those specific sites, we would require somebody who has a boat who can access all of those stations. Somebody who lives on the water would be amazing to have as an ambassador. But basically, they would have a 1.5-hour training, likely with myself or another CBA staff, where we will hands-on go over all of the procedures, how to use our meter that records those in-the-field measurements, how to take those water samples. And after that initial 1.5-hour training, we offer to go out with that volunteer for the first time, but it's a once-a-month commitment. I would likely, you know, try to reserve a day or at least a half day to get those sites done. And then after you take those measurements and you take those water samples, there is a little bit of work back in filtering. We filter one of those samples for the chlorophyll levels that we send off. So those have to be filtered once you're off the water. So I would reserve like a half day for this effort. But we aim to get volunteers who can make the commitment for like at least a 6-month time period.
We'll spread the word. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks for being here. This is awesome.
Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, I've known and worked with Allison for more years than either one of us wants to remember. Our kids, too, yeah. But this is for the staff, because y'all just measure pollution to make sure we're in compliance, or, you know, we're monitoring it for our program, for our funding, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so the questions about the fecal, which is where they were going, which is where members of the council were going. I'm going to ask city manager to reach out to the health department, and I don't believe they test in the bay. Is that correct? That's my memory. Yep, go ahead. Yeah.
I had some thoughts on that because we were talking about it beforehand. So the health department is the entity that
Right.
test for the fecal coliforms.
Yeah.
And they do that through their Healthy Beaches program, which tests at public swimming sites.
Yes.
So Noriega Park is a public
Right.
swimming site that you're developing.
See?
So I would ask them if they can add that to their Healthy Beaches program.
Thanks. That's what
Yeah,
I'm asking.
so
See,
if,
you can see
yeah.
Noriega Point.
No, it's
See, we
Noriega
think a
Point,
lot,
yeah.
so thanks
Right.
for,
Yes,
but I'm
so-
gonna direct the
because
city man, I got
That's an
it from here.
economy of scale, if they
Yeah,
can just
no, I
add
got
that to their program, because
Yeah.
they're already doing it.
Yeah.
and,
So anyway, I'm gonna ask city manager to reach out to the health department and ask if they will start testing on the harbor side of that park, at Noriega Point for fecal chloroform. Okay, and I don't think I need to make a motion of that, but I would like for you to report back at the next meeting that you have reached out, and if they haven't agreed to do that, then we'll take the necessary action.
We'll start talking. All
But
right,
yeah,
good
let's-
plan. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll do public comments. Do I see anyone here? And the light is on, so just take the floor.
Honorable Mayor and honorable councilors. My name is Guy Tadlock. I live at 502 Noriega. And later tonight, you're going to be discussing a change in construction parking rules. And I wanted to just briefly mention tonight that I'm not sure that what's being proposed right now, option 3, is something that's really going to help us or help the residents that are around a lot of construction. You see, I live on a street that in the last 10 years, we've had over 15 new houses built. I'm talking about one street now, not the whole subdivision. Old houses are being torn down, new houses are being built, which is a good thing. And right now, I have 2 houses, big houses that are within eyesight of where I live, and there are 2 that's in queue. But I sent an email, I hope that you guys got it this morning, and I showed some photographs of something that happened 4 or 5 years ago. That's maybe a little extreme, but it's kind of typical of what we go through. I'm not sure that option 3 is not going to create more of an issue, that it's going to help. On Holiday Isle, typically the building setback is 25 feet. The side setbacks are 15 feet. And typically these are pretty good sized lots. They're probably 90 to 100 feet, maybe 150 to 200 feet. The ones on Gulf Shore Drive are between 1 acre and 2 acres. So I think what's going to happen if you allow a laydown and storage on the right-of-way, along with parking, and those are the kind of things right now that I believe that is a little bit of an issue for the builder. You see, in the past, when we were dealing with a lot of this, we would go to the city and complain that we needed some help. We don't have the manpower. Code enforcement doesn't have the manpower to do that. And I think now they are trying to enforce what the ordinance is, and probably getting a little bit of pushback from it. So I'm not sure that one size fits all right now. I think that there are some subdivisions or some lots maybe that need a little bit of help. But right now, I would really suggest and like to see that the builders become challenged on what they could do to make this situation better. I believe they can. I believe if they did a better job of scheduling their trades, scheduling when they bring in building materials, things like that, I believe that we could get along a lot better. Let me give you an example. Not long ago, we had a new house being built, and the entire roof, which was a metal roof, was unloaded on the right-of-way. And there were no trusses in sight. The trusses hadn't been installed yet, or none of the floor joists. So that should have happened first, and then, the roof delivered. So really ask you to look at that. Some of us that live there, it would be very beneficial not to have to deal with this day in and day out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. I missed part of what he said, so I apologize. But I'm also going to talk about that. But first of all, item 4B, Parks Foundation. I'm so excited about that. Yes. Just spent last 2 weeks visiting not all, but many of the national parks in Utah. And I have to tell you that, boy, they are amazing. They're amazing. And they don't have any commercial activity in them. They're just located at the front. When you go drive in, there's a place where you can buy some goodies. But that's the only thing I wanted to say, how excited I am about that. And then construction parking plan. What I want to say about that is I am on Public Works and Safety Committee. I was not at the meeting when this was presented because I was in Utah. So I didn't get to see any of it, and I didn't have an opportunity to tell my fellow committee members about all those lovely emails that I've sent you all summer. So whatever you guys decide on any of that, I would like you to take into consideration what I have presented to you guys and all the parking problems that we've had. I know there's small lots out there, but boy, the abuse that was going on with construction. I even sent you one earlier today that wouldn't pertain to a right-of-way, but it's a problem. I mean, everyone comes in one vehicle. It didn't used to be that way. You come and you have 4 guys in a vehicle, but it's not that way anymore. So take that into consideration, if you would, that I didn't have an opportunity to share my experience with my committee members when they passed that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, wait, one other thing.
No,
Sorry.
You got 94 seconds.
That's right. I have 2 documents here. They're an agreement that the city of Destin has with Holiday Isle to maintain those right-of-ways. The first one was September of '98, and it was renewed again in March of 2012. We, as the Homeowners Association, pay to maintain those. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that these agreements exist, or
Marcy,
an agreement.
You have 1 more minute or a minute and a half to tell us why you don't like that option?
I don't know enough about it. I haven't even had a chance to review it.
You haven't looked at it. Okay.
Yeah, and when I did review it, I couldn't really make heads or tails of it, and I think it's just because I wasn't present at the meeting to understand it, which is part of my fault. I should have probably gotten up with staff, but I've only been back a week, so I've been playing catch up. Thanks.
Sandy Trammell, 3823 Indian Trail, Destin. I have 4 things I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The first one was an incident that happened Friday afternoon at my home and my neighbor's home. Our docks are approximately 30 feet apart. We had a pontoon boat anchor between them and decided they were going to, we thought they were working on their motor because we thought there was an engine problem. So my neighbor and I, both females, started walking down the hill to see if we could help. They pulled up the anchor, they gunned that boat out of there, and we heard them hollering, "They're home. Get the hell out of here." I was floored. I've lived there 40 years and never had anybody come up and try to do anything to either dock my neighbors or mine. But anyway, that was just an example. And we got the number and the name of the pontoon company, but guess what? They can't do a thing. It was a rental pontoon. Next story. Mr. Bagby, I would like you to add to your motion to the staff about testing at Noriega Point to also ask the health department to do fecal testing at all the right-of-ways that lead to the water that people are using to go into Joe's Bayou, the bay, in their neighborhoods. Because that's important too. Those people are swimming with kids down there. And that's important. But just a statement. The Parks Foundation, I think it's a great thing. I would caution you, please don't do like the school board did. I mean, the state school system did when they started the lottery. All of a sudden, they cut out school funding. So they said, okay, you're just going to be funded by the lottery. Please don't do that to Parks and Rec. Let it be a foundation that we can build, that we can keep going. The fourth thing I wanted to talk to you about was landscaping. This is just a visual that I have, and I'm going to use the new building that is on Mountain Drive, right there by the intersection, or the roundabout. I think all of you have seen it. Now they have this beautiful landscaping bushes out there by the sidewalk, right? Those bushes get 12 feet high and 12 feet wide. They're 1 foot from the sidewalk. Are we not shooting ourselves in the foot? You're going to have to practically kill the bush to keep it off the sidewalk to let people on the sidewalk. So we need to look at our landscaping criteria so that if you're going to plant a bush like that, that's going to be this wide and this wide, that it's not going to encroach upon the sidewalk when it's at full growth, because they're going to grow to be full growth. So that was just a observation I made this morning. Did you have a question for me? Okay, all right, I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding, Sandy, is, and I may be wrong, but my understanding is it's part of the Healthy Beaches Initiative, and they have some very specific guidelines on where they measure what. That's why I had Noriega Point down as because I know people are swimming out there all the time. But Lance, if you can ask the health department if they will look at those, but I think for them to go out there and test those regularly, they might do it once or twice, but if they don't see anybody out there swimming, it's real easy at the beaches. People are out at the beaches swimming all the time. Noriega Point on the harbor side, they'll be out there 7 days a week. The right-of-ways might not qualify for that program, but you can ask the question, sure.
And Kim, for the bushes and everything, would that be a chapter 3 of the LDC with kind of all the other setbacks, or is that a different chapter to look into for 4?
Yes, it is chapter 4.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, anyone else? Seeing none? All right, I will close the public comments, and we will move to consent agenda minus A, and we are going to pull D, and so Councilman Schmidt, if you want to talk about D first.
Sure, gladly.
Oh, yeah, I guess we,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay,
with changes.
with the changes, all right.
Second.
Motion is second. Calling the vote, but I'm blind.
Yeah, we can't see it, right?
Ray, can you switch? Thank you, sir. All right, calling the vote. Mr. Sweetser.
Matt, there we go.
All right, ayes have it, so moved. All right, Councilman Schmidt, floor is yours.
I appreciate it. I first want to just pull this out mainly because I think it deserves the respect of a discussion or out of the consent agenda for a nearly $3 million contract for any organization. So I just felt like it has a little bit more weight. But I do have some questions for either the Sheriff's Department or maybe staff. Probably start with the Sheriff's Department. If Destin did not have this contract with you guys, would there be any county or state requirement to still provide law enforcement duties and do what you're doing?
Cities are required to provide law enforcement
Cities.
in order, it's part of the city charter. As far as if you're asking me if y'all were to go with a police department, what would the sheriff's
No.
office put in the area? I'm not sure what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking if the city of Destin didn't have a contract with y'all, is there a state or a county requirement, since you are a county organization, to still
Not-
provide law enforcement within a county jurisdiction or something?
No, not for the sheriff's office. Like I said, there is a law that says that the city has to provide law enforcement.
And that's in our
It's
city
it's
charter?
under your city charter that y'all have to provide law enforcement. So you would fall into the situation kind of like what you've got in the city of Niceville, where the city provides law enforcement through the Niceville Police Department.
Right.
We have one deputy that works the non-incorporated areas of the city of Niceville.
Okay.
And from time to time, we get people who will say things like, hey, well, I don't want the Niceville Police Department, I want the sheriff's deputy. So we'll go
provide
over there and do that, but there's
Right.
not a requirement for
So
us to patrol.
before I do have some more questions, but was there something, Jim, that you had about the charter comment that you want? Okay, I just didn't want to go down the line because I'd like to hear it if it was about it, but, okay. And then, let's see. They're part on the contract about the consideration, where I'm looking at page 2, where it basically says that we pay you guys and then the sheriff pays the Board of Commission in consideration and reimbursement for the county having allocated the entire amount under this agreement to the sheriff in its current budget. So is that saying basically that the Okaloosa County Board of Commissioners have allocated $2.8 something million to provide law enforcement services to the city of Destin, and then we pay you and y'all pay them back?
I'm not sure exactly how that unfolds. I know that the county provides us with a total budget,
Okay.
and then, we take that back out of the city. I would have to check with our finance department to find out exactly how that works.
Okay.
But I think you're correct, but I'm not positive.
So most likely you just have a total budget usually
Right.
for sheriff's department,
Correct,
and then the sheriff and finance, y'all decide to
correct.
allocate it. Okay. Let's see. So I guess the budget then, when a city is not involved, and the only people I can think of would be like unincorporated areas in Destin. I'm not sure if there's other areas in Okaloosa County that are also in a municipality but not part of the city. That just becomes part of the budget of the sheriff's department, basically. Like when y'all service our unincorporated areas, that just falls under your Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department budget for the whole county, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. And then, so the last would be, by not having, well, you already answered that question because you said that there's no requirement from the county to provide. So ultimately, our city charter says that we have to provide law enforcement. How we do that is up to us, and we're making a decision to contract out with the sheriff's department. Okay, I was just curious, just some of those questions I had some people ask as well. The one other question, I'm sorry, under authority to act, it does say provide any other law enforcement activity as authorized or directed by the city council. So I take it there's 17 patrol deputies, so during the year, if the council were to provide, I guess, direction to say, hey, during this week or this month, we want a deputy to do X, is that what that is kind of saying, that we have that authority to ask you guys?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for answering.
All right, good questions. Councilman Destin.
Well, I was just going to say the situation is not quite as simple as it appears. For the first few years when the city was incorporated, we didn't have a contract for any special deputies service with the county. And in fact, they provided law enforcement. What we're paying for is enhanced law enforcement. And as we looked over the years at perhaps starting our own police department, it has always appeared that it would be more expensive than the enhanced law enforcement we're getting from the sheriff. But is there an obligation to provide law enforcement to Destin? Yes, there is. We pay 30% of the county's taxes, from which the budget to the sheriff's department is derived. Is it a obligation to provide the kind of coverage they're giving us? No, it's not. They'll give us the coverage they think we should have. And so that's how we ended up where we are. The contract is renegotiated every year. At the point that it becomes that it's not a good deal, then the city has the option of starting their own police department. It has not reached that point, but I can assure you that the sheriffs operate within the incorporated limits of all the cities, because I know I've seen them working there. So what we're paying for is to get more than they would give us, and that's the situation we're in.
And I apologize if I misled you there, because I thought you were talking about if there was a number that we were required to provide, like we were required to provide 5 deputies, and there's not a number. Yes, we're required to provide law enforcement to every citizen in Okaloosa County, regardless of whether they're in a city or county. There's just not a set number of deputies that we're required to.
I appreciate the clarification. Honestly, I wish there was a number, just because that helps, because we do have people that ask, at least me and some of us, about, I pay county taxes, right? Where does that go in regards to the sheriff's department? Because we're also paying in the city. And so that conversation is always being had. I'm sure it was had many years ago when they were here as well earlier. So I wish there was a minimum number, so that way we could say, well, if we didn't, here's what they'd be providing,
I can
but-
tell you right now, it's going to pay a captain's salary,
Right.
2 lieutenant salary,
Yeah.
4 sergeant salary, and 4 corporal salaries that are overseeing the supervision of the
Right.
Deputies that are
Got it.
assigned to Destin that Destin's not having to pay for.
Awesome.
So that's
Thank you.
where, I mean, that would be one thing that you could.
Appreciate it. I just
ease
like to
people's
be,
mind.
have information to provide, so thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point, which this was probably the first issue I went in depth on when I first got on. And the sheriff and I got into it because it is enhanced coverage, and they would never answer okay, well, what is the basic coverage? And then we can figure out what the cost of the enhanced coverage was. And the little dance, I sat down with the sheriff and the chief undersheriff at that time. Charlie was the sheriff, and I can't remember who the chief undersheriff, but one went to jail and one resigned in disgrace. And so, and I'm not saying it was because of that, but it was that mindset of it's our money and we give you what we give you. And I'm not saying, I think we're light years from where we were. But there is some basic coverage, as Mr. Destin pointed out, that is required, that they would have to have people here if we did not give them a single penny. But Mr. Destin is absolutely right. Over the years, we've negotiated enhanced coverage, and then they tell us what that enhanced coverage is. The one thing that I noticed that was not, or I didn't see, let me go back to the thing, is only one Marine Patrol deputy. That everybody in this room and everybody in the Sheriff's Department, quite honestly, knows that's not enough. From what we experienced this summer going on at Crab Island, now you can say, well, they're based out of Okaloosa Island maybe, but really a lot of their work is done out of Destin. So I just would ask y'all and the sheriff to relook that number and make sure, because that problem is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. The longer we're here and the more money the TDC pours into this. So that would be the only thing that I would ask you to do. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note as well, just to piggyback on that, the captain and I have talked, and I kind of had the same thoughts with the beach unit. We kind of share one right now, I believe, with Okaloosa Island. And so we have one unit patrolling Okaloosa Island and the beaches of Destin, and to potentially try to find ways to get a second unit. So we have, if East Pass wasn't there, maybe, but I mean, there's 2 different landmarks there. So to look at the Marine beach unit as well was something that I was really trying to find ways for. So Councilwoman Aber?
We did get that, did get that 3rd beach unit
Oh, thank
position
you.
filled since the last time you and I talked.
Good deal.
And also, there are 4 other Marine deputies that do work in the city, in the harbor, in the bayou. They're just not being paid for by the city of Destin. They're being paid for by the TDD.
Good deal. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. Ironically, Captain, that's what I wanted to stress was we do get more help on the water than what is in this contract, because I know from TDD what we see that we've sent this way. So I just want to thank you for all you do. I realize, every now and then nobody likes to talk about money, but it does take money to get great service. And I've been absolutely at several situations where you guys were handling problems, and I don't think we'd be as safe a city as we are if we didn't have you and your team. So thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do for us here in Destin.
Thank you, ma'am. And just to recircle back around to the number of deputies that would be provided, that would be looked at depending on how many law enforcement, city law enforcement officers that y'all provided in your city police department. And I'm sure that's why, I can't speak for why Sheriff Morris didn't answer the question back then. I could tell you that, if I was in Sheriff Aiden's position, I would have to know how much law enforcement y'all were providing to the city before I could tell you how much basic law enforcement the sheriff's office was going to provide.
All right, I see no further discussions on the board, so if anyone would like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
With a lot of seconds, seeing no further discussion.
Yeah, all right, ayes have it, so moved. That completes the consent agenda, and off to 4B, City Manager Report. Mr. Take it away.
Thanks, sir. Item 4B is Parks Foundation bylaws being presented to council just for your review. Forming Parks Foundation has been on our list of things to do for quite some time. It is a best practice in the field. It would give individuals in the area means to donate not only cash, but they could donate land or stocks and get the benefit of the tax exemption if we keep this a freestanding 501c3 organization separate from the city. Like I said, in the field of Parks and Rec, this is a best practice. So we are looking for, staff is looking for at least one of the council members to be a champion for this cause and help us to recruit some potential first-time members of the board, or at least to help jumpstart getting this thing off the ground.
All right, Councilman Bagby. And, you know.
Thank you. First thing I'm going to do is make the recommended motion that we approve the bylaws, okay? And I will volunteer as the legislative sponsor to be the champion for the Parks Foundation.
Good deal.
So that'll be part of my motion. Then I have a couple of things to cover.
I'll make a second.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, if I could just jump in. Sorry. The
foundation would approve their bylaws. That's
Exactly.
right.
You know
Yes,
exactly what
I've
I'm
done,
going
been down this road before.
Yes.
Okay.
Technicality.
So I will volunteer to be as the legislative sponsor, the champion for this. I want to thank Kim. I want to thank Lance. I want to thank Lisa. I want to thank everybody else that worked out. Lewis, I remember
Crystal.
seeing his input on a couple of things that helped work on this. This is something that should have been done years ago, but wasn't. But, better late than never. And, if anybody has any questions on the document, I helped edit. I didn't draft. I just helped edit the document. So, thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion. All right, calling the vote. Mr. Destin. All right, ayes have it, so moved. We might not be in good hands, but the money will be. All right, Lance, take it over.
Thanks, sir. Item 4C, staff just wants to bring to council's attention that the property on Commons Drive at the intersection of Commons Drive and Airport Road is on the market again. It's currently being advertised at $350,000 on the website. What staff would like from council is direction, if this is what council would like us to do, direction to move forward with negotiating with the owner to see if we could agree on a price for that piece of property. Right now, it's being used by default sometimes on big tournaments. People are going in there and honestly they're getting stuck because it's sand. I mean, so this would be an area where we could potentially put additional parking at, assuming that Florida Power and Light would give us permission to pave it. And it is needed for our bigger tournaments. It would also, or could also serve as a trailhead for the eastern section of the linear trail, which would link Morgan Sports Center all the way, hopefully, eventually to Main Street and beyond. So,
Nice. Button.
Number of restrictions and how it could be used, and hopefully we will point those out to the owner.
Yep, no, and great idea with the trailhead. I know that would be an amazing feature there, and I'm glad the skeletons of a past pickleball idea can still be in good use. Councilman Schmidt, you got anything?
No, I learned about this cancel button.
Oh, I don't have a cancel button.
You can't get canceled.
Councilman Guile.
I'm looking for my cancel button. No, but I've got
It's a big yellow one.
It's the yellow one. Says
Oh, the abstain button? I gotcha.
All right, with everyone abstaining their discussion.
No, I've got a question. So the purchase of this, can the legislative funding priority list Could that be something we incorporated under that? The purchase of that property, is that something that would fall under that?
Yes. The answer is yes.
The answer is yes? All right.
Possible, yes. I'm
Possible.
talking to Lance because I think Crystal had a parking fund that, Crystal, do you want to weigh in about your parking fund?
Yeah, so the thing with grants like, or legislative appropriations is that if we made they have an effective date on when they're executed by all parties, so we would not be able to close on the property until we had an executed award from the state. So that's a very tricky game to play when you're trying to purchase real estate. Otherwise, we had budgeted this year to combine the Sibbert and Zerby parking lots, but it looks like that's the most likely scenario is we're going to use that area to stage for undergrounding. So I don't think we're going to get to the Sibbert-Zerby parking consolidation this year. So I think the next best use for those parking fees would be to purchase this lot and pave it for parking.
How much have we made this year on parking?
Well, I don't have the actually I do have the exact numbers in front of me. But I'll just put it like this. I have $800,000 in the bank account right now.
Thanks, that's great.
Okay.
So I could close.
Just to be-
But like she said, I hope that we could negotiate something lower than their asking price right now.
We're not setting, like, regardless of what would happen with city managers and attorney, we're not required to use your plan that you have for the funding right now, would we be?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this should be a motion to.
That would then lock us into using it for only parking, which who knows if it always would be, so, okay.
All right, seeing nothing else, I'll call the vote. All right, ayes have it, so moved. Good deal.
Thank you, Council. Item 4D, residential development construction parking plans. Council had asked staff to come back with some working ideas on this, and Mr. Zanguzzi and his staff have been working this item.
Good evening, Council. I have before you this report on residential development construction parking plans or staging plans or lay-down plan, however we want to say it here. I kind of outlined what the LDC currently has regarding right-of-ways and development, and right now it says there's absolutely no loading, unloading, or parking or storage of equipment in the right-of-way. So that can pose some challenges on some sites. Obviously, we agree with no storing of that in the right-of-way, but I've also provided some just standard Florida statute language when it comes to stopping, standing, or parking in roadways and things like that, just for reference. And then also provided kind of Walton counties with our neighboring county, what they have in place over there with their construction zones and stuff, and labeling those construction zones. Staff has drawn up some exhibits. Ryan, our engineer, provided those for me to provide to you that kind of give you a little visual with these options on a visual exhibit nature. So with that, we took all this information to Public Works Public Safety Committee meeting, and there's a few engineers, I believe, that are on that board that kind of lean towards the option 3 here, and the board then voted for option 3 to recommend to council this evening. So with that, if there's any questions that you have, I'll I'm open, and between Ryan and I hope we can answer all your questions.
All right, well, we'll let the questions commence. Up first, Councilman Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. About 20 years ago, the city passed a right-of-way protection ordinance. Did y'all review that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
About 20 years ago, the city passed a right-of-way protection ordinance. Did you all review that one?
Yes, that's what's in here before you.
Yeah, and so it appears in the last 20 years, we put that on a shelf and quit paying attention to it because I, as I drive through town, very little of that ordinance is being adhered to. So my question is, is this going to be a new rewrite of that? Or are we going to, obviously, we're not enforcing that ordinance. So when we go to a new one, do we repeal that one? What's your suggestion?
It's not, we wouldn't repeal the whole section of the protection of right-of-way, only those particular to construction activities. So it'd just be for development type activities. And the reason under this development part of this section that I outlined in this staff report under the A3 is, I mean, you have, especially for loading and unloading of materials and things like that, I mean, you have flatbed trailers that are 24 to 43 feet long, plus the truck that pulls them. And then you have a lot that has a 20-foot setback from the right-of-way. You can't even fit that vehicle onto that property to unload it. So I think what we're trying to do is come up with a medium ground here where we can say, well, you can unload in the right-of-way providing you provide all the DOT traffic signs and standards, to make it safe for traffic to get around. And you may unload and load in the right-of-way, but you must make sure that it's put upon the property. Or option 3 was, it could be within the right-of-way, providing that it's 5 feet off the roadway, so you don't have any hazard of anyone swerving off the road slightly or whatever and hitting something. So that was kind of our happy medium we were trying to come up with for some of these sites that have so many, that are so small, and you just don't have the same amount of room as some sites, so. Trying to do a balance here.
I get it. I'm not sure I'm real comfortable with the compromise so far, because we're going to have to do some kind of enforcement.
I did run this by the Deputy Director of Code Compliance, and he seemed to think that that would be more easily enforceable than what they have right now, because the contractors just, he says, I can't pull into those.
So one of the issues, and to add to what Noel is saying, one of the issues Code Compliance has had is that the current code says something to the effect that temporarily parking in the right-of-way is okay, but it does not define what that means. And so Code Compliance staff has had challenges in enforcing it and arguing with people over what temporary means. I think Noel is trying to say it should mean loading and unloading, and that's it. And having this in place would require an amendment of that code provision, and we would clarify it. But that would be my suggestion anyway, to define it while we also put this into place if you go with this option. Would that work? And I don't know if Troy has anything to add to that. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, well, and I can see the thought process behind that is probably very good and sound. So as we go forward, this is a suggested remedy 3. We would take this to an ordinance change, I suppose?
Yes,
And
yes, we bring back, yes.
Yeah, in that process, we could sharpen the pencil and try to get it a little more precise.
Absolutely.
Of course, there would be 2 public hearings, so anyone in the public that would wish to weigh in and missed the committee meeting could do so.
Bagby, were you up? Councilman Bagby?
Yeah, most of my concerns mirror Mr. Destin's, but I noticed that in the minutes of the Public Works, Public Safety Committee's meeting, it said they amended their recommendation to include addition of items identified to be in the schematics and included in the design manual and wherever else it ends up being placed. And I didn't see that in this agenda item, and I assume when it comes back before us for review, it will include all the things that the Public Works, Public Safety Committee recommended. Is that a correct assumption?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I apologize, I did miss that it was not in
I
this.
just, you know, they're working hard, and I want to try to support them, so I just want to make sure we didn't just blow them off here. But okay, we'll get to see it again and again, so I'm okay.
All right, Councilman Guile.
This is something that I know just a little bit about, unfortunately. And every one of these citizens are eventually going to need a roof. And when you start dealing with, you can't park in your driveway, so you're going to have to find somewhere to park your vehicles. There's going to be a roll-off or a dump truck in your driveway that you're going to have to deal with. We're going to have vehicles that our crew has to be able to park somewhere with all of our equipment. Whenever you're considering this, I realize it's going to be a nuisance to some extent, but if we're not careful and we're not cooperative, you're going to get what's called a PIB upcharge, a pain in the butt upcharge, and you're going to pay through the nose if, just like we do with Alice Beach or watercolor or anything like that, and you're going to have contractors price gouging our citizens because of that pain in the butt to try to deal with this. So whatever the solution is, or that we decide or resolve or settle for, I hope we take into account that if we're not a little bit lenient, our citizens are going to be the ones that suffer over it.
Good point. Councilman Schmidt.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, I believe also part of this that we were trying to do, I could be wrong, was also to discuss an actual plan for where you can park as well as where you can stage materials.
Yes, and so if you look at the exhibits that we provided, it gives you the kind of the shaded area that you could stage in. And when we could require applicants to provide what they perceive as their, because obviously all lots are different shapes and sizes, right? So have them submit as part of their review of their permit application, a staging area, lay down area plan, so that staff can review and say, yes, this area that you're depicting as your staging and lay down area is compliant with our code. Does that make sense?
It does. So just to confirm, when this comes back as a rewrite of an ordinance, it's going to be actually a requirement to provide a parking and staging plan in the permit process. Okay.
We will add that, yes, sir.
I would like to add that construction sites are very fluid. So to try to hone somebody in, so you have to stay in this area, like there's different things happening throughout the whole life of that construction
No, I
site.
agree with you. I think what a lot of the calls and complaints that I've received in the past, though, were when materials for construction were being placed in properties that weren't even under construction or next door or across the street. And, you know, so I would assume if that's part of the plan, that would be in the permit documents that said ABC neighbor has given me my approval, here it is. If that's the plan, right? I mean, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, because once you put some landscaping in over here, now you might need to shift some stuff over. I understand that for sure. So the item number 6 that says, I guess, is this what you're saying, that code where it says occasional parking in areas zoned as residential, is that what y'all are referring to as confusing, that contradicts when it says you cannot park in the right of way?
Yes.
Okay. So besides just trying to kind of clear up some of the conflicting information, we're also going to, the option 3 is also saying, hey, make sure you're putting out, I guess, cones and doing some other things that the FDOT is requiring you to do to be in the right of way. So that's going to be easier for code compliance to enforce?
Yes, that is what I understand. I went over it with them.
Okay. Part of me feels like it'd be easier to enforce
Sorry.
by just saying you can't park in the right of way for more than X amount of minutes or hours, not whatever the FDOT says, because now we're gonna have to train our code enforcement guys what the FDOT policies or rules are, and I mean, maybe that's doable.
If you're commencing loading and unloading, then that should be clear. When you're done, get out.
Right, which I agree with you. So I guess what I'm saying is adding these 4 or 5 additional options almost are adding too much, because we're adding more requirements or check boxes or whatever for them to have to consider, rather than just provide us a plan. If you park in the right of way, it's this, and keep it simple. But I like that we're doing something, because like Mr. Destin said, it was 20 years ago, I guess, that this was created. So we need to do something, because it's an issue for a lot of residences in the area. So appreciate it. That's all I had.
All right, seeing no further discussion, anyone like to make a motion? Did we? All right, Destin's got the recommended motion.
Second.
All right, got a second. Seeing no further discussion, calling the vote. All right, ayes have it, so moved unanimously. All right, 5E, my most favorite part of the night.
Next up, we're looking for some council direction with regards to the upcoming SRS contract, which the framework for the potential city center and its various locations.
Good evening.
You already have a question.
Already have a question. Mayor, council members, good evening. Let's talk redevelopment, shall we? Just as an opening statement, redevelopment by nature requires a comprehensive and coordinated approach. And as you know, this is because there are often several things at play at any given time. I would even venture to say this is more prevalent in our situation. We are essentially a redevelopment community. So in light of that, help me out, IT guys. You ask us those very specific questions. And I contend that in order to effectively answer those questions, we need to have a comprehensive framework to address these issues in a much more comprehensive fashion. From my point of view, this is probably the most opportune time to establish and discuss such a framework. And I say so because we have a number of forces or things that are at play. Please. And these forces at play are, number one, recently acquired the property down at the foot of the bridge. That's an opportunity. We have recently received positive news from the entity that's now in control of the remaining site of the public's property. And they've indicated their willingness to work with the city. That's an opportunity. We're in the process right now of rewriting our comprehensive plan, as well as LDC, which in my view provides a vehicle to assign appropriate land use classifications for any identified project. That's another opportunity. And finally, as you all know, we have currently going a Highway 98 and Stallman traffic study, and also an analysis of the options to cross Highway 98 underneath the bridge to get to the harbor. That's also an opportunity. So in all of this, we have all these emerging opportunities that I think we need to take advantage of now, and in a comprehensive fashion. That said, our framework should bear a few things in mind. we should clearly understand that we're in a redevelopment mode. Also, that we should not totally recreate the wheel. There have been a number of discussions that have gone in the past and good ideas that have been offered that I think we need to revisit and take whatever is good out of them and move forward with them. Third, I think we need to define where to start, and I think it's fairly obvious if you consider that most of the properties that we're talking about here, which I'll show a map, are all in two significant redevelopment areas in the city, the Harbor CRA and the Town Center CRA. Please. So, for any framework, in my mind, we have to establish a few things. One, you've got to have site control, and that you can get it through just outright purchases of property like we have, or through partnerships. And in the past, we've done a good job in acquiring and establishing various sites in our community. That's an area that I think we need to go in and see what we can do from a redevelopment standpoint. And in the process, next slide, please. Go back to the past. This is from the Sasaki plan. There were ideas that came out of that. We need to revisit that and see what else is still at play, instead of marching forward and just simply recreating the wheel. Next slide, please. So what should a framework look like? In my view, it should answer three questions: the what, where, and how. The what, for me, helps us to create a clear set of objectives of the projects that we have in mind and ensure that they align with both the comprehensive plan, because it has policies in it, also the CRA plans, which have policies in it. As a matter of fact, we're in the process right now of updating that, so that this project have got a context, that they're not operating in isolation. And then finally, the where should clearly look at some of the specific projects like the town center that was looked at in the past and see whether that's still viable or not. If not, why not? And then look at what else has been proposed. I know Councilmember Schmidt has got an idea. A member of the CRA, Harbor CRA, had an idea. And I'm sure if I ask all of you here, you have several ideas. Let's have all these ideas come into play and be looked at so that we have a buy-in from the community. And then the how, that's important. How all these different projects be designed, integrated, and implemented in practical steps with design principles and policies that make a lot of sense given the overall picture that we're trying to paint. To do that, I think we require a public engagement discussion. A public engagement discussion. That is so important in ensuring that any project that is selected for implementation is comprehensive in its view, in meeting the needs of the community, is well informed, it's accepted, and aligned, more importantly, with the objectives of either the CRA area or preferably with both the comprehensive plan as well. Next slide, please. So I'm recommending tonight that we put on a retainer and employ the SRS consultants who came here during the review process for the town center, and I think most of you felt they did a good job, and help us coordinate this effort so that they can have residents participate, businesses, community stakeholders, and get a sense of the needs that are out there through charrettes, workshops. Also, help us define the objectives of some of these projects that are being proposed. What kind of classifications we're talking about from a land use standpoint. Third, assess the practicability of the projects. given the area's condition, the land uses, infrastructure, transportation, parking is a big deal, as you know, and the economic factors surrounding it. We also need to look at design guidelines so that there's cohesion to these projects, so that they mean something when everything is said and done. That makes us all proud. And more importantly, we need to have a phasing plan. So identify signature projects that will form that catalytic event to attract new investment in the community. That's what I see the role of SRS for us, to kind of gather us, have us, give us a framework to operate. Two things will be key, in my view, in getting this done. First, next slide, please. The process has to be inclusive, it has to be flexible, responsive to the needs of the community, and evolve with what we currently have from a development standpoint. And then more importantly, we've got to be smart to leverage the expertise of these groups, especially our consultants. So with that, next slide, please. I'm asking for two things: that we approach in this comprehensive fashion, and secondly, that Kim and I and the manager work with SRS, come up with a scope of work that will bring back to you folks, and bless it so we can go to work.
All right, Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I move to direct staff to proceed with this comprehensive approach and bring the SRS contract back to council at the October 16th city council meeting for council consideration, and I have some comments.
Second.
All right, continue on.
Okay, thanks. And I agree with everything you said there. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be holistic. It has to be integrated. And we have not only 7 different views up here on what ought to be in those spaces, and I'm not even sure. Some people want to put the town center where the new Publix is going. Some of us probably want to put the town center down by the harbor where we have the community center and Harbor One and a few other parcels. Some people may want to put governance buildings at the Publix and recreation or community focused structures down on the, I don't know. And everybody, the 14,000 citizens, we got 14,001 different opinions. But we ought to engage them, and we ought to figure this out, because long pole in the tent is, and I like the phasing approach, long pole in the tent is going to be actually funding this, because we've spent $9 million on a parcel, and I voted for it just like everybody else up here. So, but how we phase this in and how, we have to think like developers, not like, well, I want to get a hockey rink. And I love the former mayor, former mayor to death, but people don't move to Destin. I have not met a single person that moved here in the 25 years that I've lived here for a hockey rink. So, we have to look at the broader picture. And if he wants to donate the money to build a hockey rink, we'll find the land. But, we have to do this right. This is our one shot at it, because once we start pouring concrete, it is real hard to change. And so think like a developer, think like we're going to build a Rosemary Beach or an Alice Beach or whatever, and how we would lay it out and what we would put in each of those areas. And maybe we don't put anything in the Publix area. Maybe we get them to pay for the stuff in the other areas, because what they need from us is density, plain and simple. And if you haven't seen what they're asking for, they're asking for the ability to make a lot more money. And I'm happy for them. And I'm happy they're coming. But we have to leverage that to do what's best for this community. And so, everybody knows I love this almost as much as the mayor. But actually more than the mayor, but I won't say that. But yeah, this is the way forward, but we've got one shot to get it right, so we don't need to rush in and say, let's do this here and let's do that there, and let's figure this all out. The last thing I will say, I will go back a couple of months when the staff brought us the strategic plan, and we had this conversation, and they said, well, we really got too many things, we only need 2 or 3. Because what you brought us was work with stakeholder, 1.2, work with stakeholders to pursue the Destin City Center. And then you brought 1.5, underground utilities, and 1.6, Stallman US 98 pedestrian and vehicle improvements in cooperation with FDOT. And then you brought us 1.8, transit trolley system, and 1.9, city marina. And I said at that time, and I'll say it again tonight, we can solve all those. I can knock this down to 3 things: a city center, you know, the crosstown connector, and beach or water access. But we need to consider all these things that we've said over the years are a priority, and we need to figure out, and maybe they can't all be solved with this plan, but I bet a majority of them can, and that's all I'll say.
Good deal. Councilor Schmidt.
Thank you. Thank you, Lewis and staff, for bringing this tonight. I agree with Mr. Bagby, a lot of what he said. I do agree with this approach. I will put one caveat, whether it needs to be in the motion or not, is that, you know, because you've set a date for a contract, I do feel strongly that whatever happens in the upcoming meeting with the firm over at Publix could really affect what you're wanting to bring to us on October 16th. So I would hope that y'all all take that into consideration and delay bringing us back a contract if whatever happens at the future meeting. You know, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, point well taken. Yeah.
Okay. And in the visioning stuff, I mean, I hear what Mr. Bagby's saying, and we can change the strategic vision and plans at any point during the year as well if we need to. So if there's something that changes that, then we could change them. So we, you know, so if we find success here, we can update that plan, strategic vision. So look forward to it. I'd love to knock a lot of those off the list. That'd be fantastic. That means we're accomplishing it. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Councilman Guile.
Thank you, Lewis, for the presentation. I do have a question, and it follows what Councilman Bagby said, thinking like a developer. When you bring back the contract on the 16th, can you also bring back that list we discussed about the list of properties in the city of Destin of what we do have available? Can that be here with the contract, please?
You're talking about the whole comprehensive list of properties in the city?
Correct.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good point. Councilman Destin.
Thank you, Mayor, and I intend to go along with this comprehensive plan too. However, we need to be very careful about what we're willing to sell, how much more of Destin's soul we're willing to sell for high density to accomplish this city center, whatever it may be. Thinking like a developer, I may be struck by lightning if I do too much of that.
You do that.
But I want to look at a comprehensive plan, but at some point I get to the conclusion that how much more high density can we stand here? And so we need to think long and hard before we make deals with the devil.
Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points. All you're bringing back on the 16th is the contract with SRS. It has nothing to do with what we're going to do at this parcel with Publix, or what we're going to do at that parcel on the harbor, or what we're going to do. You're just bringing back the contract with SRS to set up a process where we can consider. So Publix will have probably a year, 9 months, to come back and say, let's do this together, or let's do that together. So I'm not as worried about that. And the only other thing I would say is we can change the strategic vision at any given point during the year, and we can change the budget at any given point during the year. But it should be the exception, not the rule. And sometimes it gets to be the rule because when you start changing priorities and funding and start jerking the staff primarily, but also the committees and the people who think, I'm getting my utilities undergrounded, oh, nope, now it's going to this person or it's going to that person. So I would just say, and I know we all know this, just be careful about, let's just approve the contract and let's see where it takes us to do. But I agree with Mr. Guile. I would like to see all those properties, because I think that will have a major impact on where we decide to put different things. Thanks.
Yep. My last little 2 cents, and again, it's just only a orange, so that potential partnership site. Just throwing this out there now that hopefully, knock on wood, the school board is going to be purchasing that 7.5, but just shading that parcel in as well. I know it's not necessarily going to be in our purview to do much, but I think through a partnership, we might be able to knock off maybe one of the issues in the community. Perfect. So with that, seeing no further discussion, calling the vote. Matt needs to confirm. There we go. I just have it so moved. Comprehensive plan and the contract. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor, before I leave the podium, I'd asked our city engineer to kind of throw something together to kind of give us some real quick an opportunity to imagine what we could unlock from a development potential standpoint. So he'd done a 3D rendering of what we could do real quick, if you could allow him to just kind of show that. No?
Oh, here comes his job on the line.
Good evening.
The magician.
I just wanted to talk about some ideas, some concepts, get the ball rolling. So this is a quick overview of Lewis's map. The yellow shows the town center CRA, the red is the harbor. The green is the areas of focus that he had on his map, and then the blue is the city properties kind of within those areas. So I wanted to kind of zoom in and look at a couple things. Let's say we put a parking deck, parking garage, redid Seibert Zerbe. It is a 640-foot walk from the corner of that property to One Harbor. It's a 675-foot walk from the corner of the parking lot to Captain Leonard Desson Park. And it's an additional 760-foot walk to Clement Taylor Park from there. So if we take a quick little look at a couple things, let me shut some things off. This is going to start showing some concepts of and freeing up the ability to do some things in these areas. So if we look over at the Seibert Zerbe parking lot, and let's just say we did a parking deck, just extended the community center parking across that property. We'd get quite a few parking spaces. It can be designed to have 2 or 3 additional parking levels above it in the future if ever needed. But what does that free up in that area? Let's just say the community center. We wanted to utilize the parking in the parking area here. That frees up the ability to expand the community center, have additional uses there. Maybe the sheriff's substation can be put in the first level down here, and then that frees up this area for expansion. Maybe the museum can be moved over here and redone. That frees up development over here too. And also, if you take a quick look at the parking deck out of the trees, you can see the orange is the One Harbor parcel. It's not that far of a walk from the Seibert Zerbe parking lot. Now let's take a look at the Marlar parking lot. If we did a parking garage there, and right now our current code only allows it to be 3 stories, so this is a 3-story, but to make it economical, it'd have to be probably higher. But just a massing exercise, a parking garage can start freeing up more development along the harbor. People can buy into the parking garage and have more shops and restaurants and bars and stores and whatever down the harbor, make it more of a walking district. So this is just a couple different ideas of what the massing would look like in this area if something like that was put together, and give you some ideas to start talking about different things. Any questions?
Thank you, Ryan, for putting that together.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
Looks awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Just got to add a walkover bridge on that parking garage.
Tunnel, yeah.
A tunnel on the other side. All right, good deal. All right, thank you so much. Anything else on that? All right.
Item 4F is a harbor channel dredging study proposal, and staff is seeking council's direction to engage Baskerville Donovan for the amount of $20,580 to conduct the harbor channel study using NPEB funds.
All right. With that, do I have a motion on the table?
I'll make the motion to authorize the money for the harbor channel dredging study as listed there. $20,000.
I'll second that.
All right. Ray, you got that?
It's the recommended motion.
Recommended motion? All right.
Can I jump in for a second? That's mislabeled. It's not a dredging study proposal. It's the actual survey to be done to do the channel. It's not a study.
About to ask you what that meant.
Okay. Councilman Destin, any?
I still have one comment.
All right, jump on in.
I support going forward, but I hope we all understand that this survey is a small part of what this project will be. Experience with dredging in the past, you're looking at $100,000 to $200,000 probably. Got to put the sand somewhere. I'm sure we can find somewhere the sand will go well. But this is going to be a lot of money, and we've discussed that environmental positive funds that we have stuck. Crystal, how much money do we have in that fund?
We currently have a balance of $120,000.
Okay, and as long as we are improving the environmental quality of the harbor, that should be funds that are available, and I think we can make a very good argument that we are in fact doing that. So as we go forward, we still need to keep in the back of our mind, where that money's going to come from, and whether we need to go forward to contract it out or buy a dredge. Unfortunately, when you buy a dredge, if you don't use it constantly, it stops working. So that's probably not a good solution, but we need to already start figuring out how we're going to get it done and how we're going to get a contractor to do it.
Councilman Schmidt?
Thank you. Ryan, is there like a statute of limitations on how long this survey could be used for future dredging? Because I know we're doing this in order to possibly dredge, right? That's a requirement?
Yes, this is going to help us determine how much needs to be dredged.
Right.
Typically, surveys are good for 90 days, but since this is in the water with tides, like things are changing so frequently, I wouldn't trust it even past before 90 days.
Right. And this is a requirement from Army Corps of Engineers would have this type of requirement for us to do a survey?
It's not a requirement. We have a permit through them for maintenance dredging, and this is just step one of figuring out what needs to be maintained and where it needs to be maintained.
Appreciate it.
Councilman Guile?
Apologize, I was looking for the exact dollar amount for the motion. I didn't see it where I was looking. I apologize for that delay, but I do have a question. TDC has helped with dredging in the past, correct? Hasn't TDC funds?
They have assisted with East Pass dredging in the past, is my recollection.
Not in the harbor, just in the channel? All right, but this is still something that we could put on the legislative funding priority list whenever we submit that, correct? So there are still possibilities for other funding out there. Uh-oh, there's a pause, hold on. Jim had something he wanted to say.
The only thing I would say is, you're dealing with apples and oranges. Okay, a legislative funding priority list is to the state legislature for money, i.e. the linear park, that we got a state grant for that, or state funding for that. TDC has nothing to do with the state, so we can go to TDC. You can, Teresa can ask or whatever, would they be willing to help, or we can ask the county commissioners. That's not a legislative funding priority. Okay, that is a ask of the TDC or whoever you want to. If you want to ask the legislature if they would be willing to do that, we can always ask. But I don't want us to get confused and think that the legislature is going to tell the TDC to give us money, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying at all. What we were looking at are two different potential sources of funding. And one of them is going to be a question we ask later, because from what I understand, there's a legislative funding priority list that we're supposed to submit, and that timeline is running out. And I'm basically leading up to the point to where we get to where are we at with the priority list. So, but that was two independent sources of funding that we're just offering to look at.
Councilman Schmidt.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back. Mr. Destin said something, and my questions to Ryan, you know, as you said, Mr. Destin, and as I think Ryan somewhat said as well, you know, if we're about to approve spending $20,000, then we're going to need to also approve within potentially the next 90 days to go and do a dredging project with money that we don't even know how much it's going to cost yet, how, you know, anything about. So is it possible to do a few more steps before we do this? Like, before we approve y'all to go do a study, can we get a little bit more details on what the next cost would be and where it's going to come from on the budget from Crystal and everything else?
From an engineering standpoint, the only way for me to know the next step is to get the survey data and compare it to the permit.
We just said, as we get the survey done, we've got to figure out pretty quickly where the money comes from.
Do we have any ideas, Crystal, ahead of time already of, once we do this, where we could potentially come spend the money?
Yeah.
Besides some of the ideas that Mr. Giles is talking about.
To be honest, I think going to the TDC to help bridge our gap is our best option. We have some, I'm finishing up closing the year right now, and there are some unexpended TDC funds from this year that will be rolling forward and will be available. So hopefully they won't balk too much at an unsolicited proposal a little bit out of season, just to use up money that, you know, prior year money.
Okay.
The state legislature, they're wonderful. Yes, we are on the deadline to get our requests in, but those are requests that would be honored and awarded next June, and I think next June might be too late for this project.
Okay. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure, because unless at least 4 of us are ready to go spend the 6 figures to do the dredging, then we shouldn't even approve this tonight, is all I'm saying. So hopefully we're all ready to pull the trigger on the 6-figure dredging in the next 90 days, in one way or the other. Would be my only comment.
I will add that talking to some engineers that have done this type of project in Dustin before, they said that the lead time to get the actual workers out here to do it is pretty long.
We have to make the decision, though.
Yes, so
soon.
it's going to be months probably before it
Okay.
gets started.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, a couple of things. I disagree with the 90 days. You know, you do the survey tells you how many cubic yards of sand you have to dredge out, how much you know, while we're still working out where to put it and stuff. And it may be 10,000 cubic yards, it may be 40,000 cubic yards of sand. We don't know until we do the survey, number one. Number two, it'll be more than 90 days because to get a dredge laid on, I mean, they're scheduled out 6 months in advance at least. So it's not like, you know, I think we heard we got to get this done in 90 days or the survey's not good and we can't. No, our permit is open. We could do it today. We can do it 6 months from now. I don't know the exact date our permit expires, but that's not the issue. So until we do the survey and know exactly how many cubic yards of sand we need to dredge out of there, well, all we're doing is approving 20,000. If they come back and tell us it's going to cost us $2 million to dredge out, you know, the sand that needs to be dredged out, then we either say no or we go start with our little cups and bake sales and stuff and find $2 million. So I think, as Mr. Destin usually does, as long as we're approving this tonight, we get 2 more bites of the apple or 3 more bites of the apple. Let's just go ahead and approve this tonight.
Mr. Bagby, if I could clarify, since you're talking about me, I'm not saying that we have to do this in 90 days. What I had said was that we have to make a decision to execute to do it. Whether it takes a year or 2 years to actually do it, doesn't matter, but we have to potentially make a decision based upon what staff was telling us. So that's all I said.
Yeah,
it's not
okay.
about running and making a decision in 60 days.
Yeah,
we have
don't
to decide
have to make that
tonight,
decision.
are you ready to spend $200,000 if the TDC doesn't help us? If you're ready to do that in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, that's fine.
Yeah.
So
Well,
nobody's saying
we're
just
not
to go make
making
a
that
decision tomorrow or anything.
Yeah, we don't have to make that decision on whether or not to spend X amount of dollars for the next 6 months. No, we've got however long we want to take to figure it out.
Councilman Gall, you good? Saw you in and out.
More than good.
All right, fantastic. All right, calling the vote.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I read the recommended motion for the record? Motion to accept the Baskerville Donovan proposal in the amount of $20,580 and direct the city manager to have staff move forward with an analysis of the condition of the Destin Harbor Channel once the survey work has been completed.
All right, thank you. All right, the vote's still open. All right, unanimous, ayes have it. All right, any announcements?
Yes, sir, just a few. Just a reminder that the Destin Seafood Festival will be held this weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The city is once again co-sponsoring the event, allowing use at the Morgan Sports Center parking lot as a shuttle site. The city also has traditionally allowed the north section of the Marler Street parking lot to be used as the vendor staging area and waived the fees for that section of the parking lot. Again, there will be a code compliance workshop on Monday, October the 23rd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. in this room. We encourage the public to attend. The city will host its open house on Wednesday, October the 25th, beginning at 11:30 at the Destin Community Center. We hope everyone comes out for the free fish fry and to meet our staff. It's a great event, so we look forward to seeing all of you and the public there. October the 30th, the city will have its annual Fall Festival at the Community Center. There will be the annual costume contest and jack-o'-lantern contest, as well as the other fun activities for the kids. So if you've never attended, please grab your kid, a neighbor, or your grandchildren and take them up there. It's a fantastic event put on by the Community Center. And as a reminder, we'll only have one regular city council meeting scheduled in November. That'd be on the 6th, and in December, scheduled on the 11th. But council always reserves the right to call a special meeting if they want to. That's all I have.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Do we need to make a motion to waive the parking fees for the vendors?
I would feel more comfortable if council
So
did
moved.
that.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
No, let's get vote.
All right, calling the vote.
Because they'll have vendor stickers in their car or something, right?
Confirm it. They do it right. All right, vendors aren't paying.
One other item I failed to mention, because it was brought up by one of the council members. Jeff, do you want to give a quick update on the linear park and where we're at?
Absolutely, I'd be glad to. We were extended last week, a one-year extension from FDOT on our grant agreement to do that design. Right now, DAG is working on a conceptual design. City staff have seen that, and they're working with stakeholders to get their input on that. As soon as they get an agreement from stakeholders, that'll become a 30%, and then they're going to take that to the committees and the city council here in the near future. We anticipate final design sometime in April, and then we're going to be working on the permitting through the end of the remainder of the grant period, which will end next October.
All right, thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, seeing that, we'll go down the list. Councilman Sweetser.
I don't have anything tonight, but thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. Councilman Gao.
I do, and I'm going to ask that you put this under the agenda for me, under my name for every council meeting. Just call it project status update or something of that nature. I keep getting a lot of calls where the community keeps asking me questions, so I'm just going to ask here so that they can have one source of review. One Harbor Boulevard doesn't close till October 17th. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. The linear park, you said 424. We just covered all that. The Crosstown Connector funding, we're looking at two options. One is to borrow rolling into the fall borrowing, or the second is Jeff and Crystal looking at federal grants. Is that correct? Those are the two options you're looking at?
That's correct.
All right.
And
Tarpons.
state grants.
I'm sorry?
State grants as well.
And state grants, okay. The Tarpon Springs Park. TDC is, what are we calling that? The Tarpon?
Just Tarpon Beach.
Tarpon?
Beach.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tarpon Beach. Yeah, Tarpon Beach Park. The TDC is getting the engineering design. Is there a date? in which they're going to provide these designs to us? Is there something that's written that says they're going to provide it by a certain deadline?
So the county has been working with city staff and the city engineer to finalize those designs, and we will bring a more specific date back to you at the next meeting, but I expect it to be soon because we've about got all the details worked out. Ryan, do you have anything further on it?
No, they finally have addressed all of our concerns, the meeting we've had. And asked them for a full set of plans so we can start permitting.
All right. The Crystal Beach, Where's Waldo property, has anybody reached out to the owner like Kevin asked during the last council meeting?
Yeah, I did, and I spoke with him. He's still open to selling the property to the city if we're interested, so Lance and I went ahead and ordered an appraisal. We got a discount and a rush. We should have it in a few days. It was supposed to take about 2 weeks, and that's where we're at. So I informed the property owner that once we got that appraisal, we would be back in touch.
Wonderful. And the legislative funding priority list, do we have something organized and ready to submit so that we can meet their minimum deadline?
Yeah, right. Their deadline is November 1st, and we are meeting tomorrow as a group to talk about different projects we'd like to promote and move forward. I think Crosstown was going to be one of the ones we were going to discuss, and then the group might have some other ideas as well.
So November 1st, okay.
We have to approve it in October.
So we have to approve it by October 6th, or the next meeting, 16th, correct? So that means you all have to have it to us by the 16th to submit by the 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could bring back the list that we were planning on bringing forward.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. I appreciate your guys' time and patience on the updates.
All right, Councilman Destin.
Mayor, and I was going to discuss that priority list also. We've probably got a number of lists we'll have on it, then the council will consider it, I hope, at the second meeting in October. And we will come up with our list that we can present to our local legislative delegation. Now, one thing that should be on the list that I'm going to champion is we had our meeting with Bashville Donovan about the Stallman intersection. And we talked about the fact that trying to get the pedestrians off that intersection would meet all the boxes in the DOT list of what should be approved as a grant. We'll create jobs, we'll streamline the traffic, and now that we hopefully will close on the property under the bridge, we have a route that we could go through under the bridge in addition to trying to go over the intersection. That's one thing that we can do pretty quickly that's going to have a pretty dramatic effect on that intersection. So I would make a motion when we get to it that be added to our priority list. And I don't know, Mr. Gall wants his dredging, but we've got to get that done so we can turn it over to our delegation, and we need to do that at this next meeting. The other point I would bring up real quickly is it appears that there is money to be had in the form of grants for historical preservation. We need to have a historical preservation act that may be somewhat different than we have. If we can get that done pretty quickly, then we can apply for some grants that are available. And we do know someone who is on that committee that makes recommendations for those grants. So I would suggest that we make a priority. And they're giving grants out for a lot of different things, restoring cemeteries that are historic, restoring buildings. There's a long list of things that we could apply for, and we certainly need to do that. And that's all I have at the moment, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback on you real quick on that. So maybe it's a little early for this, but the idea of me and Jeff have been talking about, we've been talking to other cities in the state of Florida, seeing how they do things, comparable cities that are above us. And one of the biggest ones was a continuing service contract for different grant agencies and potentially engineers that could both get the grants and then perceive the work. But for the continuing service contract for grant writers and administrative staff, is that something that we are interested in seeing in a RFP form at this point yet? Or is that something we want to kick around a little bit more? But I know one-man band, Jeff and I, as his sidekick who's learning, there's a lot to be done. He's an amazing manager, and I think there's a lot of support that could be helpful for all of us on the different pockets of grants and the specialties of different people who potentially are good at crafting and writing those grants and securing them for us. So
Didn't we put in the budget for that?
I'm just kind of open.
Wasn't it in the budget, though, to do a grants administrator or something like that? Or was that pulled from the budget? I can't.
Do we know? Maybe professional services?
Well, I think there was a request for some type of grants deputy or grant something, right?
I don't
know.
I think we had some money in professional services, but I'm not sure how much.
Most of those folks do it on a percentage of the
Yeah.
grant.
Yeah, so
it
it's not
shouldn't
even
cost
anything
us
out of our,
much.
yeah.
And Jeff's our grant guy, so we would look for a suggestion from him, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, I would be glad to put something together like that for you, and actually I've already been working on it somewhat, so hopefully in the near future I could bring that.
All right, good deal. All right, thank you so much. We'll work on that. All right, Councilman Bagby.
3 quick things. There are a lot of resiliency grants out there, state and federal. And so one of the legislative priorities I will bring up next meeting will be the permanent solution to Four Prong Lake, which we've met with FDOT before and others from the states, DEP, similar to the project that they did down in Panama City Beach when they closed off the dune outfall lake down there. Second thing, City Manager, I'd like for you to set up a meeting with Michael, yourself, Michael, TDC rep, Sheriff's rep, and a rep from Taylor Engineering. And we'll go down and we'll locate the erosion control line at 2 points on our beach, probably one just west of the park, the county's park, and then one at one of our crossovers. And I don't care, you can use Shira, Barracuda, wherever you want to go. I want people to see exactly how much public beach is actually down there. And Michael has assured me he can operate the machine and we can figure that out because it's a lot more than 20 feet based on the last survey.
I would throw in Barracuda if we can, if we're going to ask for one, I would say
Yeah.
Barracuda. There's a lot of locals in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I can make a motion, but I think just directing the city manager to set up, I'm just asking for a meeting. I'm not, but yeah, I'll make a motion that we have a meeting
I'll second.
with myself, city manager, Michael, TDC rep, sheriff rep, and somebody from Taylor Engineering that did the survey.
All right, we got Councilman Schmidt with the second. Seeing no further discussions, and call the vote. All right, ayes have it, so moved. Good deal.
Okay. And just so the staff knows the timeline that the rest of us are operating on, the legislative delegation meeting for Okaloosa County with our legislative delegation is the 23rd of October. So when we get this finalized at the next meeting, I would expect somebody from the staff, city manager, I'm looking at you, to present that to the legislative delegation on October the 23rd. And if you need the time and location of that meeting, I will gladly provide it for you because I'll be there with another hat on. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, good deal. Councilwoman Aber.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to talk about getting our boards and committees and sort of consolidating it because it's been harder and harder to get members to be on our boards and committees and then having quorums so that they can meet. So with your assistance, City Manager Kim, can we look at consolidating the boards and committees so that we don't have as many and we don't have to worry about as many volunteers trying to match up schedules, et cetera?
Awesome. Thank you for bringing that up because I think from our staff, it would be a lot of additional hours of staff put back into projects. And while the committees are very important, I think we do have a couple overlaps at this point that we could potentially look at.
So is there a consensus from council that we should come back with some suggestions on that, consolidating as many as we can? Okay, I just want to make sure nobody is strongly opposed to this.
My only question is, as we consolidate, that means unless we expand the numbers on the committees, somebody's not going to be on a committee anymore. So we need to pay attention to what we're consolidating.
We look forward to your recommendations.
Thank you. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman King.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing, and this is just kind of piggybacking on the grants thing. I think we all understand the value of our grants department and with the job that Jeff does. And I think what a lot of folks in town don't realize is that it isn't just their tax dollars that are paying for everything. Jeff and the city manager's office to do a lot of work to get us grants, and I think we should push and back these guys and gals as much as we can. So you guys have my total support, and thank you for what you're doing. So that's all I've got tonight. Thanks.
All right, Councilman Schmidt.
I appreciate it. I got a couple things on the agenda, a couple off. First item is the Morgan Sports Complex baseball field improvements. I've been traveling recently and talking to some folks in some tournaments scenes, and one thing that's very important to me, and I think some others on the council, is the youth of our city. And one thing that I've also noticed in the youth recreation leagues in the city is that a lot of times we miss out on developing the kids from certain ages and helping them along the way throughout their, whatever they choose to do. Obviously, they're not going to be all college athletes and professional baseball, football players or whatever, but to try to help them to grow, learn skills, learn everything. I think it's very important. And so in recent times, we've talked about the baseball at a 13-plus-year-old level, where we've heard in the past about we can't do that here right now. We can't. I think there are ways that we can provide an option to the youth of the city of Destin to be able to play at a level that we can't currently play in the city of Destin on our facilities. That would be the number one thing. Certain kids cannot play baseball in the city of Destin's facilities very well. We have one option right now that will soon be going away at the elementary school. But to be honest, up until recently, that wasn't really used in the manner with the Little League or other organizations. We have tournaments that come here often. Y'all heard, I think in the past, in the summer, we have the Morgan Sports Complex packed. Just a couple weeks ago, I saw there was somebody up there. There's a new organization. I think I talked to Ryan. It's called USSSA. It's not new. It's new to our area. For some of you that don't know, there's multiple nationwide organizations that represent travel sports. That's a new one to Destin that's going to potentially start coming here starting February, maybe in the spring, coming here monthly. But whenever they look at a certain age, they send them to Fort Walton, they send them to Niceville, they send them to other areas just because Morgan's doesn't have the capability. Are they mad about that? I mean, I don't think so, but if a parent has siblings on two different age groups, would it be nice to be able to play right here in Morgan's? I think so. So ultimately, what I'd like to do is the bare minimum requirement to adjust the 4 spin wheel fields to be able to play baseball at that level. And what that means, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is we basically have to install plugs. They're called plugs. They basically, you put a hole in the ground to extend base paths, right? So right now, if a base path is, let's just say, 65 feet from home plate to first, there's a plug in the ground that's holding that base. We would need to add plugs beyond that. What that allows you to do is today it could be a softball game, and then tomorrow it could be a baseball game, and then the next day it could come right back to be softball. That's one thing. The second thing, at minimum, if we can have our staff do it, which they are fully capable of doing it because they've done this on an entire field over at Morgan's, is to pull some grass from the infield area. And as long as it doesn't interfere with Destin water users, we have the people and the equipment to do that. And those two things would then give our city youth the opportunity to play. It also allow the travel tourism to continue to be allowed to stay right here in Destin for concessions and everything else when they come do these things. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion to direct city manager to have staff modify the 4 fields to be able to, at minimum, the bare minimum, be able to play senior level baseball.
I'll second that.
All right. Got a first and a second. I got a lot of discussion. Yeah. So Councilman King?
I just was going to see if we could hear from Parks and Rec on what you guys think about that, guys and gals, what y'all think about that, and is that doable? Is it feasible? Would just like to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Well, yes, it's doable. all 4 fields. You go into 90 base path, we're going to lose 20 to 20 feet of grass in the outfield. That's going to be a lot, and that will definitely change our soccer. You know, when we have soccer tournaments like we just had last weekend, they play on all those outfield. Like I say, it's doable. You guys have anything? We have had the baseball field, like you said, Kevin, and, you know, over there at the elementary school, the baseball tournaments that do come, they like their age groups together, I think. That's what we kind of see. And they move the older kids, if they have them, to another field, but they use all of our, you know, the Niceville, Fort Walton, and us, we're all usually within those tournaments. So, I mean, we can do whatever you direct us to do.
Anything else? All right.
I'd do at the end.
All right, Councilman Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like a pretty dramatic change for Morgan. And the beauty of the moment is that we have another option. If the school district buys the 7.5 acres like it sounds like they're going to, I would suggest we try to enter into an agreement with them to build the kind of complex that Destin deserves there. And so, you know, I'm not sure what the cost is to do this proposed change. I know that baseballs go a lot farther, so do we have to build substantially bigger fences? I would be more comfortable, and I'll make a substitute, that we ask staff to bring us back a cost estimate on how we do it and how we do it safely and how we do it efficiently. And that in the meantime, Mr. Schmidt goes and talks to the school board to see if they would be willing to partner with us to try to put in a complex over there that would accomplish this very same thing, only now we've got 2 complexes instead of 1 that we're trying to do 2 things with.
Second. All right, got a second on the substitute motion. Councilman Bagby, yep.
Yeah, my concerns are the same as Mr. Destin's. I mean, the cost, I'd like the staff to be able to tell us. You know, I'd like it staffed. You know, what's the cost? What's the impact? You know, how many days do we think it'll get used? There's a whole bunch of questions I have, but I think Mr. Destin's motion will allow us time to do that. And then, yeah, we ought to, whether it's Mr. Schmidt as the champion for the project, somebody ought to engage the school district and say, how long is the field that's there going to be there? Because they're probably a year or 2 away from building anything. And what do you have planned? And maybe they've already had conversations with the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe part of that parcel is going to go there. But that's a lot of land where they could probably put 2 full-size ball fields as opposed to us making the modifications on our current. And I'm like Mr. Destin, I think we already said that we would commit some money to partnering with the school district, and I think we put an amount on that. I'm still willing to partner with them, particularly if they're willing to give us a couple of full-size ball fields over there, you know, to find that money to partner with them. So that's all I have.
All right, Councilman Schmidt.
I appreciate it. I look forward to hopefully being able to do some of that. A few comments. I mean, I'd love to partner with the school board too. I'd love to partner with them building a new community center that has multiple gyms. We have 6 baseball fields at Morgan's. We have a 50-something-year-old community center that's falling over. So that'd be nice to do that with baseball fields over at the school board, but I don't think that's what would be the best benefit for most of the people in the city. But I also think we're overthinking a lot of this. You know, is it a lot of grass, Lisa? Sure, but we don't have to do all 4. We could do 1, we could do 2. We have removed the grass from F or G.
Yeah, it was on F.
We removed the entire infield of grass from field F with no council approval or request or direction or anything. So I just want to remind everybody that it can be done. It's been done before. And all we're trying to do is put some holes in the ground and then cut some grass out of the field. And with the hopes of giving an option for people to play baseball. And if that means a soccer team has to cut through the dirt a little bit in their soccer game, I think that's, you know, it's not going to kill anybody to run through a little bit of dirt when they're playing soccer. I just think we're overthinking some of this, unfortunately. But I'm not opposed to getting some numbers and doing some things like that, Mr. Bagby. I just still think that we're making this a little too difficult for the staff to do some of these things, in my opinion.
All right, Councilman King.
Just a thought, and it's not the most, maybe not the most popular of ideas, but there are could you go to a full grass infield? That way you don't lose any grass. You literally don't lose any, base path. I mean, I know that would be a great expense, but, there are full grass infields around. Maybe not around here, but, does that benefit everybody if we do something like that? And can we get numbers on doing that? I'm sure it's expensive.
I don't think it would apply to softball having an all-grass infield. What we would cut back is actually the ring around the infield for the outfield grass. Because the way the mound sits, it's 60.5 feet from home plate and then 95 feet back to the grass line. So currently we're at about 65 feet, so we would shave that rim to get the 95 and have the clay for the infield.
What I'm saying is, what if we brought grass in for the back of the infield? Does that make sense? So instead of cutting grass away and going all clay all the way out, you just bring grass in. Now we got more grass.
Yeah. I mean, that, if we wanted to dedicate that field strictly for baseball, I don't know how softball, the folks that play softball will feel about the grass infield, but we can find out.
Yeah, all 4 fields are, there's no grass. They're softball fields in the pinwheel.
That's right.
All right, I don't see any further discussion, and so I will call the vote on the substitute motion to bring back data and facts from staff.
Can we put a date on that, Mr. Bagby? Or Mr. Destin?
There's only one meeting, so November's meeting. November.
As long as they're okay with that.
Will November work or October 16th to push?
We have a bunch of stuff on.
I see what-
Yeah, November.
All right, November, all right, you guys good with that?
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
We'll spend an hour on the legislature.
I know that's going to be my one question. All right, call on the vote.
I still have one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
No, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, jump on.
I just was, I went over to Threadgill Park today, and Parks and Rec probably going to kill me for this, but I did some walking around with Matt Dahlman, who's the treasurer of Destin Little League, and we were looking around in some areas. It doesn't matter, but we went into the shed, and I said, man, I'm pretty sure that's the same lawnmower they cut the grass with when I was there. That was that was 30 years ago, maybe not quite that, but what would it take to get those? What would it take to? I know we've got new batting cages and all that, and the turf is a really important part of the baseball and softball and everything that goes on there. Is there I know that we auctioned a perfectly good lawnmower. Well, maybe not perfectly good, but we auctioned a lawnmower off at auction a few years ago. Is there what is our involvement with Destin Little League? Do we? Can we get them a lawnmower that has implements that's made for that and not hodgepodge together?
Well, we
Not trying to be a contrarian, I just am, you get it.
Well, we do all the maintenance over there. Yeah. That is, I believe, wasn't that ours at the beginning, way back when? I don't know.
Are you talking about the?
Sorry, not the lawnmower. The pulls the
groomer?
drag. Sorry,
Yeah.
it looks like a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right.
Yeah, we do all the maintenance over there for them. So-
And y'all don't want a
and we
new,
bring-
you don't want a new drag puller?
We don't use that. We bring our own.
Okay.
Yeah, normally when we do it, we do bring our own. They definitely do need a new one, and we can get with them and talk about an option to see what we can do. Help out maybe.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll also, before I go on to the next thing, is we did add onto the budget and the vision about upgrades and things to do at those parks. So there's potential, including turf and all sorts of things. So there's going to be a lot more, I think, to talk about there. But that's a great point, Johnny. The next thing, the Tourist Development Council funding allocations. I'm sorry. Did you?
Councilman,
I
sorry,
apologize.
Switzer, do you have anything on that before we push?
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it in the Destin Little League contract that they're responsible for all of those, not us?
Right, so this year, I guess, was this the first year? Usually they pay to have that done, the lining of the field and the grooming, and they've always had somebody do it. This year, they had us do it, so we did charge them for that. But we do all the cutting, and it's just for getting them ready for their games. We would send somebody over there, and they paid for the lining and the dragging of the fields from our staff.
Okay. All right.
It's a City of Destin asset. that
Right.
We lease out to the Destin Little League this year for about 9 months approximately, right? 9 or 10 months or something, we lease it. So during that time frame, there was a lease we approved not too long ago that says what they do and what we do. So, Dan.
Yeah, no, I went
right.
over it
You're-
in full.
Right, so you're
but-
right, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't see you earlier, Matthew. TDC, for background in the past, for some of the folks that weren't here previously, the municipalities and the TDD Tourist Tax District came together and kind of brought up potential lawsuit to the county to do some things. And one of the things that came up during that time was a self-collection. And what that meant was that instead of the state of Florida collecting the bed tax, the county would. And one of the purposes of that, and I'm just going to say, my version was because we wanted to know, and others wanted to know, where the bed tax money's coming from. We always speculated for years. I've always heard about where the money comes from. We always knew where it came from, but we wanted the proof. And so one of the things that they did was self-collection. And recently, we were kind of wondering, how is that going, right? Where is that information? It's out there, but it wasn't really readily available, and here you go. There is information out there, and so what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to task the city manager to work with finance and anybody else that's involved to bring the council back a quarterly report of the TDC collection amounts. And I would ask that, since we haven't done it yet, we would do it kind of like get the past year and a half, and then starting in January, we start every quarter. And that's a request I'm hoping that we could have brought back to us. If we need a motion, we can. If that's something y'all can just bring to us. Okay, the information is readily available, we've learned. And I think it would just benefit the council, hopefully, y'all would benefit from it, to know that, this past month, it was reported that the city of Destin was nearly 50% of the bed tax collection in the entire taxing district. So that's one of the new numbers that we learned about. So I want to make sure that we see that on the regular, and so do our constituents. The priority list, man, I can't wait. I say on the legislative priority list, we just make it 20 items, so that way they just know. So next meeting, we'll throw out a whole bunch of them.
Do you have a top one? I'm kind of taking notes from everyone.
Let's just knock them out. We
Just
got
kidding, no.
we got the
Not
under the
this meeting.
bridge pedestrian walkway. We got the under the ground pedestrian walkway. We got Morgan's Sports Complex renovations. We got Henderson Beach East Side entry, which is not the city of Destin, but that'd be great. They would figure that out. So, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things. Obviously, Crosstown Connector, but if that doesn't finish, then, 20 years in the making, we could potentially sell it and use the money for something else, I guess. But, there's a whole, all I'm saying is let's provide a whole list of wish list items whenever it comes to us. I'd love that. Because we're not asking, ye shall receive. That probably wouldn't work in the legislation, right? But you don't get what you don't ask for, right? There we go. So let's go. Let's go ahead and ask for whatever we can. But that's all I had, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I got nothing. Kim?
I have a quick one. I was talking with the HR director about her employee manual, and I believe she is out sick, but she had mentioned that it was adopted by ordinance. And so generally, for ordinances, that's something we want to be able to enforce with the public. I'm thinking this should be adopted by a resolution next time we make changes. It has things like federal and state laws that change. Anyway, if council doesn't object, I would rather present it as a resolution to the extent that it's policy. And that's what we're going to do unless anyone here doesn't like that idea. I wanted to give you the opportunity to stop us.
I'm not seeing anyone.
Yeah, no, I'm just have to think through what the benefit would be of a resolution.
I think it's because if we need to change it, we only take it to the council once, and there's still the opportunity to discuss it. It wouldn't be something that would change without council approval. It wouldn't be staff amendments would not be possible because it would be council policy. But for an ordinance, the city incurs costs every time they have to change it because you have to advertise it twice and hold multiple meetings. So, and there wasn't a reason to put it in an ordinance that I'm aware of, so that's why. But
The only thing I'd point out is ordinance form requires public hearings. I had this discussion with Ms. Kopp earlier in the day, and do we need public hearings in something as mundane as HR? I'm not sure, but that's the only downfall. The public doesn't get to participate. I don't know if they care to in these things.
not automatically, but if we wanted to give it, like if you have a resolution and you want to give the public the opportunity to speak, you could.
Councilman Bagby.
Yeah, the only downside, kind of piggybacking off that, is it alerts the staff. If we're having changes, we have to have 2 hearings, and so they have time to go, oh, I didn't know they were changing the retirement plan for the city, or they were changing the evaluation process or whatever. So that would give them a heads up, but I would think they are more attuned than most people and would know as soon as it hit the thing. But that would be the only short side that I would think of. So yeah, I'm okay with the resolution, I think.
All right.
Good. Thank you. That's all I had.
All right, good deal. At this point, we'll accept any more public comments.
And Chambers in the house.
Talk about the plan that we saw.
Shane Moody, President and CEO of the Destin Chamber. Councilman Schmidt, don't you dare stop the Crosstown Connector. Please. My comments mainly are on Lewis's presentation, which, first of all, I think is great. It's a fantastic plan. It's nice to see something that resembles real economic development being worked on. I will offer up 2 or 3 things for you. The Chamber is in the process of creating an economic development committee. We are getting ready to have our first meeting to discuss how we want to set it up. It'll fall under our Vice Chair of Economic Development and Government Affairs, and the board will have an oversight of the committee. But who's going to be on it, things like that are what we got to talk about. But I'm sure we'll be coming to you all with input on some of the things that we're talking about. Second of all, somewhere in my office, in some of those great big drawers that are in there, are several redevelopment plans that were done before I got here 20 years ago. One of them is the Sasaki plan. I think one of them is Vision 2000. Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, if I can't find them, I know Jim's got them because Yeah, because he's got them, he brought them to council not long ago, and so we've got that. We can offer those plans up as guides or something for you to see. I think they were both really good plans. They were done before I got here, but I have reviewed them. So they're there if anybody wants to see those. And Stallman 98 came up several times tonight. I don't remember when it was, but when Okaloosa County Commission wanted us to support the half-cent infrastructure sales tax 6 years ago, maybe 7 years. I think you two were actually on council at the time, and I stood up and talked about it. The Stallman 98 intersection was one of their projects that they had on their list to take care of, which is one of the things that got the chamber board to approve the plan, the half-cent sales tax. We were the last chamber to hold out on that, and they finally came to us with the projects they were going to do for Destin. So that was one of their projects on their list, and I could probably go back and find that document that they gave us. So keep that in mind as you go through it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you.
While Sandy's working her way up here, I did have one other thing. I apologize. If you want to volunteer for the Parks Foundation Board, my email address is on the city website. Please, and I already got your name on my little short list here. I knew you would be. Yeah, you got to write a big check though.
Well, I can't quite announce what we're working on right yet. Okay, so let's leave it at that, please. Sandy Tremmel, 3823 Indian Trail. I just wanted to talk to you about the consolidation of the boards and the committees. I understand where you are. I've been sitting in that seat myself. One of the things that I trained when I trained the committees was committees go out and look for people. You know people that have expertise in the areas you're in, go find them, get them to turn in an application and do it. You know why they haven't? There are no vacancies. Council needs to call the person that is not attending, like the one we have on Parks and Rec for, 18 months now, and we've never laid eyes on him. But anyway, and say, resign. We've got people waiting to come. Sitting right back here wants to be on the harbor. We have no vacancies on the harbor. If they're not going to attend, they don't want to participate, fine. Let's find some people who will. Those of us that are on the committees know other people that can help us with those committees, and we can work to help you get those committees filled. But we do have to have spaces available for them to apply for. So it's pretty simple. You just call them up and say, you know, the process is I have to bring you before council and I have to, you know, chastise you in front of everybody, or you can just turn in your resignation paper. Simple as that. So if you'll help us, we'll help you. And I think all the committees are ready to do that.
Mr. Mayor. Yes. Ray, wasn't there a process if somebody's missing for 18 months that you would be notifying us or putting it on the agenda or something like that?
I did, sir. At the last meeting, I gave you the last 6 months status, and I plan to do that quarterly unless you want it quicker.
Okay.
But last meeting, I provided you the past 6 or 7 months attendance.
That was on the agenda?
In the packet, right?
The agenda packet?
Yeah, I can send it.
Do you mind resending it?
Sure, I will.
So it was in the agenda packet. Okay.
All right, anyone else? All right, seeing none, meeting is adjourned.